Good morning, everybody. It's espresso time. I'm trying to hide the... if I can just do this, there's no logos. Yeah, what I was trying to say is we're gonna talk about being burnt out today. Working in IT is difficult as it is. Sometimes it just feels overwhelming having all of the things just piling up, and it typically is either it's super calm or things just pile up. That's sort of my experience throughout the 20 years I've been in IT. Is there's either nothing or there's everything happening at the same time. Now, when there's nothing happening, what you need to do, you need to follow any updates, news, new products, new features, new ideas, new ways of approaching things. And that of course means that when you work in IT, it's quite a job. It's like almost like a 24/7 job sometimes. You're never really off work, especially if you're dealing with difficult problems or you're trying to do things like analytics. When we do analytics, I just am never off work. It's always on inside my brain. It always continues with, ticking away and figuring out how to do things, how to approach the problem. Cloud is a big area. It's really all of IT combined into one, right? It's really all of IT plus all the sciencey and industrial stuff. Sciencey being analytics, machine learning, all the industrial stuff being IoT and connecting to hundreds of thousands of devices possibly. So that just goes way beyond what you would typically experience in an enterprise platform. When an enterprise, you got your platform, you know what your platform's features and limitations are, and that's it. Whereas when you jump into cloud, it's like doors keep opening all the time, right? And this is true both for private cloud and for public cloud, because in public cloud, well, it's the public cloud provider that continuously builds stuff, right? And then in private cloud, you're the one that needs to continuously build stuff. And in private cloud, all the private cloud projects that I've worked on, it's been users or customers have been requesting features that are just beyond the capabilities of the team that's building it sometimes, right? So one example from long ago is this is 2010-ish, right? And we're talking about a platform that we developed on vSphere, right? On ESX. And when we rented out virtual machines for people, right? Instead of them buying hardware, they just bought a virtual machine and paid for it monthly. And of course, we were working on a reservation model, right? So you would reserve your capacity and you would get that capacity every month, and you'd be using that capacity. I don't know, there was a lease that was signed, right? So somebody came and said, yeah, what we want to do is we want to use, we don't want to do pay as you go, and then we want to shut down machines at night, and we want to turn them off in the morning, and we want to do it automated, because public cloud providers can do that, right? At that time, it was AWS, the only provider that was allowing, doing that, because you would basically just, send API commands, shut the machines down, wake the machines up. And it was a fairly large customer that was requesting that feature. And of course, our team was basically, 4 people that were in charge of that environment. And we're talking about 2 technical individuals, well, 3 technical individuals, 1 individual that was more for data center support, meaning power and cooling and racking. There was a network guy that was dedicated network guy, and there was two of us that were working on the platform itself, on virtualization, right? So 4 people managing, operating a platform for plenty of customers. And I know what the problem was, right? The problem was we were way understaffed, right? So we couldn't design new features. We were staffed enough to handle the platform as it was designed, right? But we just weren't staffed. We didn't have the knowledge. We didn't have the experience back then. This is 2010, right? This is 10 years ago. I didn't have the experience of how to interact with APIs, and I hadn't really started working with AWS. That was one of the projects that actually led me to start working with AWS, because somebody was saying, okay, in AWS you can do this, and then I was like, what? You can do that now? Because the first time that I really had any kind of contact with AWS was back before they were even supported Windows instances, and that was an evaluation for a client where they said, okay, we want to evaluate the service, and my client was running Windows, nothing else, right? So that's pre-2008 probably, or early 2008 maybe. So after that, we sort of wrote it off as, oh yeah, this is for like, e-commerce websites. This is for what Amazon.com is doing in the US. This is not even going to be for our market. And this was back in Europe, and the market that I was working on in Europe was super small. So then in 2010, when we were building this, when we had this solution running and it was commercialized and everything, and we had clients on it, and it still runs to this day, I'm pretty sure that the exact same servers are still there in that data centers, and you can still source virtual machines from those exact same 10-year-old servers, because it's a really small company, and perhaps they've decommissioned them. But anyway, we built quite a lot of capacity. We had I don't know, we was in the hundreds of cores, and in a couple, the capacity of memory was in the terabytes. I don't know if it ever got expanded to terabytes, to multiple terabytes. I know that when I left, it was probably about 3/4 of a terabyte, and that was in back in what, 2012 that I left, which was quite a lot of capacity at that point. At that point, we're talking about the first servers that offered memory at the terabyte scale were coming out in the industry. So the basically bleeding edge product was a terabyte server, right, at that point. And in 2012, having the ability to have a terabyte of memory in one server was basically just mind-blowing, right? Right now you can have multiple terabytes in. You can have a terabyte in a desktop of memory now, right? It's not a problem anymore. But at that point it was bleeding edge. So our machines had pretty large capacity DIMMs. They were probably like 16 gig DIMMs, and we'd probably be packing what, 12 DIMMs probably per machine, 3 channels, 2 CPUs. Yeah, probably 12 DIMMs per box, right? 3 channels per CPU at that point. You gotta remember, these are old machines. This is really old machines. This is like DDR1, maybe DDR2 memory in there. So these are old machines at the moment I'm recording this. And yeah, we packed them hard. We packed them probably with 100 gigs per box, if not, yeah, it's probably 100 gigs per box, 128 maybe per box, something like that. I might have my numbers wrong. 128 would mean 8 slots. Yeah, maybe it was 8 slots and we only populated 8 slots to have some more expansion capacity. Let's say 128 slots per machine, and we had half a rack. So yeah, there must have been a terabyte of memory in there when I left. And if you look at the CPUs, those CPUs were probably like 8 core. Nah, 2012 wouldn't be. 4 core. 4 core across 2 CPUs, 16 virtual cores with hyper-threading. So we would have, in physical terms, yeah, 100 cores at least in that half a rack, right? Which was, at that point in time, for our market, we were one of the biggest data centers in that market itself, right? So yeah. Anyway, when I go back and I think about what the customers were asking, the customers were just asking too much. They were asking, you know, more than we could offer, and that was the problem at that point in time, where we thought, oh shoot, right? We are understaffed, right? How are we gonna do this? And basically it was up to me and the other guy who was working for the platform to try to figure out how one of the vSphere products, a Cloud Director or something like that was called back then, how that works, and how we could use Cloud Director as an API front end for them to, you know, turn on and turn off machines. Because essentially we had very limited management. We actually allowed customers to VPN into the platform and interact with the vSphere vCenter, right? So vCenter is the management front end. So we actually allowed them to interact with it, and we had profiles built with very little permissions, read only plus start and stop virtual machines, right? So essentially what they would have needed to do is have somebody wake up at 7 a.m., start virtual machines, and you know, then start also billing at our end. And that was the problem that we had. Also, the second problem was, first was no API. Well, we actually had an API, but when you expose the vSphere API at that point, you would have exposed a lot more than was necessary. And we didn't know how to do this. And probably any VMware engineer will tell me now, oh, you know, it's so easy. Yeah, I agree that it shouldn't be difficult. It really shouldn't be difficult to do that. But yeah, for us at that point it was difficult. And what it led to was essentially us, you know, never ever developing that product, never ever expanding on the capabilities of that product. And that was a shame, right? That was a shame. And we got into sort of a situation where, what do we do now? Then, you know, we other stuff happened in that company, and the management was basically not around because they were dealing with some other emergencies, and that company owned the data center also. Then we spun out the virtualization product from the data center product and had a new company, and that was alive for a bit of time, and that company still exists up until this day. It's a fact. It mostly resells services for a bigger cloud provider that kind of absorbed them into their infrastructure. So yeah, that's stories from the cloud for you. So where I was going with that is, when you're building a solution and there's competing solutions out there, you probably are going to find yourself with people asking for features from that competitive solution. So there's two things that need to align well for something that's built in-house to work. Something that's built in-house and is competitive to a commercial platform to work. First, the expectations and the actual features need to align well. If those don't align well, then, you know, expectations set too high or expectations set too low won't work. Why? Well, expectations set too high, you know what happens, right? Everybody's like, it doesn't even do that. Whereas expectations set too low will be, nobody will know how to use this platform because their expectations are way too low for this platform, for them to be able to use that platform efficiently. So think about somebody who's expecting to do all their work manually, and now they're getting a private cloud solution. Why are you getting a private cloud solution if you're doing all the work manually? Right? If you're not automating, if you're not using the APIs, then that doesn't make any sense. So it's all about the right expectations versus the features that you're going to deliver in your tool set, in your solution that you're implementing. And yeah, when you're in cloud, there's no downtime. There's always, even once you've built a solution, once you've made it work, there's really no downtime. You gotta continuously update your platform, your application. There's no downtime when your application is essentially working and there's nothing to be developed or nothing to be fixed or nothing to be improved. Well, then you spend your time improving yourself, building your knowledge, learning. And that can get quite exhausting. This is why I'm making this video. It's been, the first half of this year has been pretty intense, to say the least. A lot of work, a lot of training, a lot of consulting, and different things. Just switching from one platform to another, from one mode to another. Like, for example, switching from the trainer mode to the consulting mode to the learning new features mode. It's just exhausting. So what you need to do is you need to get a good balance of how much you work versus how you relax or how you spend your time when you're not working. Now, the way I try to do it first is I try to do a day when I just let go of all devices. Just a full day of letting go of all devices. I know you'll ask my wife that that's not true. She'll tell you, why did you bring your phone along? Right? So it's difficult, but you gotta get out into nature. Walks, right? Walks are important. I haven't been doing many walks. Well, I've been doing some walks. I haven't been posting many walks because everything that I record is incoherent. What else? Do some physical activities, like, right? Get some, you know, go cycling, go running, go to the gym, right? Whatever is your thing, everything is good. I find that when I do something that's physically exhausting, the mentally exhausting things don't seem as much of a challenge anymore. The problem, for example, is doing trainings week after week after week. If I have like 6-7 weeks in a row, I find that I'm not only mentally exhausted, I'm physically exhausted, because it takes a toll on you. It takes a real toll on you. I sometimes see my students are exhausted after day 3. It's very, very hard to get through the training sometimes. It's very, very hard to get to just sit in a room for 3 days and just talk or just listen. Do it. If you want to be a good, if you want to give good advice, you gotta know how to explain things to people. And the way you get better, at explaining things to people is by answering questions. And where do you get good questions? Well, you get good questions when you do deliver training. I'm gonna end it here. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, subscribe to my channel, etc.